My name is Jonah Rourke. I'm 33 years old, and until the night I almost stood a woman up in the rain, I honestly believed the best part of my life had already happened without me. I want to be careful about how I say that, because it wasn't self-pity. It was just arithmetic. I spent my 20s in a small yellow house on the edge of Elk Fork, Montana, learning how to lift my mother from a bed to a chair without hurting either of us, learning the names of medications the way other men my age were learning the names of their kids. She got sick when I was 19, slowly at first, then all at once, and I was the only one close enough and stubborn enough to stay. My father was long gone. My sister, Marnie, was building a life 2 states over. So it was me. 10 years of me and her and the quiet. I don't tell you that so you'll feel sorry for me. I loved her. I would do it again. But you should know that when a man gives a decade to keeping someone else alive, he sometimes forgets to build a life of his own to come back to. My mother passed the winter I turned 29, peacefully in her sleep, with my hand on hers. And when the house went quiet for good, I discovered I had no idea how to fill it. I was rusty at everything that wasn't work. I could put my arm inside a laboring cow up to the shoulder and coax a calf into the world. But I could not, for the life of me, hold a normal conversation with a woman across a table without feeling like a horse that had wandered into a church. So I did what rusty, lonely men do. I buried myself in the practice. Large animal veterinary work in a county this size means you are never truly off. There is always a colicky horse at 2 in the morning, always a ewe in trouble, always a fence and a phone that needs you. Work loved me back in the only language I trusted. And that is exactly the man my sister was looking at 4 years later when she decided she'd had enough. "You're going on a date," Marnie told me over the phone, in the tone she used to use when she wanted the last cookie. "Friday." "I already said yes for you." "You said yes for me." "Her name is Nell. She's kind, she works with animals. You'll have things to say." "Jonah, I swear, if you wiggle out of this one, I'm driving up there myself." I wiggled anyway, right up until Friday. It rained all week. That cold spring rain that comes sideways off the mountains, and I told myself the roads were bad, told myself she probably wanted out of it too, told myself a dozen soft little lies that all meant the same thing. I was afraid. I sat in my truck outside the diner on Main for 11 minutes with the wipers going, watching the warm yellow window like it was a fire I wasn't sure I was allowed near. Fair warning, I thought, half a joke to no one, I'm a disaster at first dates. Then I turned the engine off before I could talk myself back onto the highway, and I went in. Here is the part I need you to hear before anything else, because it is the whole point of the story. That date I almost skipped, the one I tried every coward's trick to get out of, gave me a family. Not a date that led to a family someday. A family, whole and waiting, sitting in a plaid work shirt at a corner booth with 2 coffees already ordered because she wasn't sure which I'd want. 10 years of caregiving taught me how to love someone who needed me. It took one rainy Friday to learn that being needed and being chosen are 2 different miracles, and that a person can be lucky enough, late enough, to get both. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the booth. She stood up when I came in, which nobody does anymore, and stuck out her hand like we were closing a deal on hay. "Nell Prentice," she said. "You're taller than Marnie made it sound." She had a firm grip, chapped knuckles, and the kind of tired around her eyes that I recognized instantly, because I'd worn it myself for a decade. It's the tired of someone who is the last line of defense for something. You can't fake it and you can't hide it. I sat. I knocked my knee on the table. I said out loud, The thing I'd been rehearsing in the truck as a joke to break the ice. Fair warning, I'm a disaster at first dates. I expected her to laugh or to reassure me. Instead, she looked at me for a long second, like she was deciding whether I was worth the truth. And then she said the sentence that rearranged my life. "Good," she said, "because I don't come alone." I didn't understand it yet. I thought maybe she meant a chaperone, or a big family, or a jealous ex. She saw the confusion and she just went ahead and laid it all on the table. No softening, no apology. The way you rip a bandage because dragging it out is crueler. "I run a little sanctuary out past the river," she said. "Farm animals mostly. The ones nobody else wanted. Old horses, a blind goat, 3 pigs, a donkey that hates men, chickens I can't count anymore. And I live out there with my brother Sammy. He's 26. He has Down syndrome, and he works the place with me, and he is the best part of every single day I have ever spent. So when I say I don't come alone, I mean it as plainly as it sounds. There's no version of me you get without them. Most men hear that and remember somewhere they need to be." She wrapped both hands around her coffee. "I've learned to say it early. Saves us both the dessert course." I have thought about that moment more times than I can count, because I think she expected me to reach for my jacket. She was braced for it, shoulders already half turned. A woman who had been left at exactly this point in the conversation enough times to know its shape by heart. What she didn't know was who she was sitting across from. She was sitting across from a man who had spent 10 years learning that love is not the easy part or the pretty part. Love is the 6 in the morning part. Love is the part where you show up for the whole of a person, the hard mechanics of them, the parts that need lifting. She had just described the only kind of love I actually knew how to do. "Tell me about the donkey that hates men," I said. She blinked. "What?" "The donkey that hates men. I'm a large animal vet, and I've got a professional interest in a donkey that's going to want to kill me. Also, I want to know his name, and I want to know what he did to earn the reputation, because I suspect he's been slandered." Nell Prentice put her face in her hands, and when she brought it back up, she was almost laughing, and her eyes were bright in a way that had nothing to do with the diner lights. "His name is General," she said, "and he is a menace, and if you show up, he will absolutely try to kick you into next week." "Then I'll bring good boots," I said, and that was it. That was the whole turn of my life, right there over 2 cooling coffees and a slandered donkey. We talked until the diner started stacking chairs. She told me about the sanctuary, how she'd inherited a love of it from a grandmother and a lease on the land from nobody in particular, how the money was always thin and the work was never done. I told her about my mother, more than I'd told anyone in years, and she didn't flinch or do the sympathy face. She just nodded, like a person reading a map of a country she'd also lived in. I did not kiss her. I walked her to her truck under one shared umbrella that kept neither of us dry, and I said, "I'd like to see the place. Professionally. I've got a slow Saturday tomorrow." She squinted at me like she was still waiting for the catch. The next morning, I drove out past the river before I could think better of it, and I met the whole family a day after meeting the woman. The sanctuary was a hard-luck little paradise. A leaning red barn, fences mended with 3 kinds of wire, a hand-painted sign that read Prentice Refuge in careful, uneven letters. And coming across the yard toward me, wiping his hands on a rag exactly the way a working man does, was Sammy. I want to tell this part right, because most of the world gets it wrong, and Nell had spent her life watching people get it wrong. Sammy Prentice was not a fragile thing to be handled. He was the reason the place ran. He had a schedule, and he kept it better than I keep mine. He knew every animal by name and by temperament, knew which pig was off its feed before the pig knew that the blind goat needed you to talk before you touched her so she wouldn't spook. He shook my hand hard and looked me right in the eye and said, "You're the vet." Nell said, "General's gonna kick you." And then he grinned like this was the best possible news, which, in fairness, it kind of was. "I heard," I said. "I brought good boots." "Good," Sammy said with total seriousness and appointed himself my guide. He walked me through the whole operation, and he did not leave out a single detail. "This is where the feed's kept, and you never leave the bin open or the pigs will teach themselves to open it. This is Clover, she's old, you go slow. This is where General lives and you do not turn your back on him." And yeah, General went for me twice inside the first hour, and Sammy laughed so hard he had to sit down on an overturned bucket, and I laughed too, and something in my chest that had been locked since a yellow house in winter cracked open a half-inch and let some light in. I treated a ewe that morning with an infected foot, and I didn't charge Nell a dime. I told her it was a professional courtesy. She told me professional courtesy had a suspicious way of looking like a man finding an excuse to come back. She wasn't wrong. I came back the next Saturday, and the one after. A month later, I was driving out to the Prentice Refuge more days than not, and I'd stopped pretending it was about the animals, though the animals certainly benefited. I floated Clover's teeth. I sorted out a respiratory thing going around the chickens. I earned, over many careful weeks, the grudging tolerance of a donkey named General, who eventually would let me scratch the exact spot behind his left ear and nowhere else, which Sammy declared the single greatest achievement he had ever personally witnessed. But here is what I was really learning, out there in the mended wire mornings. I was learning the shape of a life I hadn't let myself want. I was learning that Nell hummed off-key when she thought no one could hear, always the same 3 songs, always in the wrong key, and that if you sang the right note back she'd stop and pretend she'd never started. I was learning that Sammy did the crossword out loud at breakfast and got legitimately annoyed when you helped without being asked. I was learning that a family is not a thing you're born into and then lose. Sometimes it's a thing you drive out to, week after week, until one day you realize you'd fight anyone who tried to take it from you. Sammy and I built a rhythm of our own in those weeks, and I want to be clear that he set the terms of it, not me. He decided we'd have coffee before rounds, which meant I had to learn how he took his, which was very sweet and very particular, and he timed how long it took me to remember and reported the results to Nell. He decided I was allowed to help with the pigs but not the chickens, because the chickens were his and he had a system, and I kept messing up the order. He quizzed me on the animals like a man giving an exam, and when I got Clover's age wrong the first week, he didn't let me forget it for a month. He was, in every way that matters, my colleague out there, and he was better at half the job than I was, and I told him so, and he said, "I know," without a trace of arrogance, just a man stating a fact about the work he was good at. One afternoon, I watched him talk a frightened new goat out of the corner of a stall, all soft, low words and slow hands, 20 patient minutes, and I thought about every gruff old rancher I'd ever met who couldn't have done it in an hour, and I understood that whatever the world thought it knew when it looked at Sammy Prentice, the world was a fool, and Nell had been guarding him from that foolishness his whole life. I should tell you about the bracelets now, because they matter more than anything else I own. Sammy braided friendship bracelets. Embroidery floss, tight and even hours of work, colors chosen on purpose. But he didn't sell them, and he didn't hand them out to be polite. Nell explained it to me one evening on the porch while Sammy was inside washing up, and she explained it carefully, because she wanted me to understand the weight of it. He only makes them for family, she said. That's his word, not mine. Not friends, family. He's got a list in his head of who's family and who's not, and it does not move fast, and it does not move for charm. You can't earn it by being nice for an afternoon. He watches. He decides. My grandmother had one. I have one. She turned her wrist to show me a faded band, years old, the colors nearly loved out of it. There was a man once I thought Sammy would make one for. He was around almost a year. Sammy never did. Turned out Sammy was right about him, the way he's right about the pig that's about to get sick. She looked at me then, steady and unhurried. I stopped arguing with my brother about whose family a long time ago. He sees people clearer than I do. I didn't say anything clever back. For once, I had the sense not to. I just sat there and understood that somewhere in that house, a quiet man was keeping a list, and that being added to it might be the highest honor I would ever be offered, and that it could not be asked for, only earned, and only truly. So those were the open questions I carried out of that spring, and I'll be honest with you about all of them, because they were the questions Nell carried too. Would I bolt? That was hers. She'd watched good afternoons turn into empty driveways before. She was waiting, some part of her, for the Saturday I didn't come. Could she trust it? That was hers as well, deeper down. Trust had cost her before. And underneath everything, a question that belonged to both of us and that I didn't yet know had a clock on it. What would happen to this place, this whole small, stubborn world, if the thin money finally ran out or someone with more power decided they wanted the land it sat on? And the last one, the one I cared about most and could do nothing to hurry. What did Sammy see when he watched me? Because he was always watching. Kind and busy and unhurried and keeping his list. The clock I didn't know about started running on a Tuesday in June, and it started with the worst night and the best night of that whole season, which turned out to be the same night. Nell called me at 1:15 in the morning. I was awake because I'm always awake, and I knew from the first word that it was bad. Clover, the old mare, was down and colicking, thrashing in her stall, and Nell's voice had a crack in it I'd never heard, because Clover wasn't stock to her. Clover was the first animal she'd ever saved, 20 years back as a girl. I don't remember the drive. I remember the barn, one bulb swinging, and the mare on her side slick with sweat, and Nell on her knees in the straw talking low and desperate. And I remember Sammy in his pajamas and his boots, standing exactly where you'd want a man to stand in a crisis, at the horse's head, both hands on her neck, keeping her as calm as anything could, saying, "It's okay, Clover, the vet's here, it's okay." Over and over in a voice so steady it steadied me too. It was a bad one. A twist, the kind that kills. I made the call that we try to manage it there rather than risk a 2-hour haul to the surgical clinic. And for the next 4 hours, the three of us fought for that horse's life in a leaning barn by the light of one bulb and a work lamp Sammy held exactly where I needed it, moving it before I asked, because he'd been watching me work all spring and he knew. Nell followed every instruction with hands that didn't shake. Sammy kept Clover's head and kept his own, and when the worst of it broke, somewhere around 5 in the morning, when the mare finally sighed and settled and her gut sounds came back and I sat down hard in the straw and said, "I think she's going to be okay." It was Sammy who cried first, and Sammy who said, "You saved her," and me who had to correct him because it wasn't true. "We saved her," I said. "All three of us. I couldn't have done that alone. Not even close." The sun was coming up gray and pink over the mountains. Nell was asleep sitting against the stall wall, worn all the way through. Sammy sat down next to me in the straw, and he was quiet for a while, which was not like him, and then he took something out of his pajama pocket. It was a bracelet, deep green and brown and a thread of gold, tight and even, and I understood before he said a word and my throat closed. "This is for family," he said, and he didn't make a ceremony of it. He just tied it onto my wrist himself, careful, double knotted so it wouldn't come off, the way you do a thing you mean to last. "Your family now." I decided a while ago. I was waiting till I was sure. I have delivered calves and put down horses, and I have held my mother's hand while she died. And I did not fall apart at any of it the way I fell apart in that straw at dawn, with a green and gold bracelet on my wrist, and a man I'd have laid down in the road for sitting shoulder to shoulder with me. Nell woke to the sound of it. She looked at my wrist, and then at her brother, and then at me, and she didn't say anything at all. She just started to cry quietly, and I finally understood the honor of my own life. That was it. That was the whole thing. I'd been added to the list. We had about 6 good hours to be happy about it. That afternoon, while Clover dozed on her feet in the sun like nothing had happened, a truck I didn't recognize came up the drive, and a man in a pressed shirt got out with a clipboard and a smile that had never once been used for anything good. His name was Roy Prentice, Nell's uncle, her father's brother, estranged for a decade, the man who controlled the family estate, and it turned out, the paper on the land the sanctuary sat on. Nell had always spoken of the lease like it was solid ground. It wasn't. It had never been more than a handshake and her late father's goodwill. And goodwill, it turns out, is not a thing that survives a man like Roy. He'd found a developer. 20 acres along the river with mountain views is worth a great deal more as lots than it is as a home for a blind goat and a slandered donkey. He handed Nell an envelope, and he was almost gentle about it, which was the worst part. 90 days to vacate. The lease, such as it was, terminated. He said the word sentimental, the way other men say a slur. He looked at Sammy the entire time like he was doing arithmetic, and I have never in my life wanted to hit a man wearing a pressed shirt so badly. And it wasn't only the land. Within 2 weeks, the squeeze came from a second direction, and it was too well timed to be an accident. A county inspector we'd never seen before began finding things. A fence height out of code, a permit for the barn that had apparently lapsed years ago and nobody had ever mentioned, a waste management citation with a fine attached that Nell could not begin to pay. Each notice arrived on crisp letterhead, each one perfectly legal, and each one landing exactly when it would hurt the most. Someone with money and a grudge was building a wall out of paperwork, brick by legal brick, and the name on the deed and the name behind the inspector were, if you followed the threads, the same name. I did what I could against the paper. I called in a favor from an old client who did fence work, and we brought the fence up to code in a weekend, Sammy running the tape measure and calling out the numbers. I paid the waste management fine myself, quietly, and told Nell the county had waived it, and she looked at me long enough that I knew she knew, and she let the lie stand because we both needed one small thing to go right that month. But you cannot outwork a man whose whole plan is to keep the notices coming until you're too tired and too broke to stand. That was the point of them. Not any single fine. The steady weight of all of them, arriving forever until we gave up. I watched Nell get smaller under it. Not weaker. Nell was never weak, but quieter, more braced, a woman doing sums late at night and coming up short every time. And one night on the porch, she said the thing she was really afraid of, the thing under all the other things. It's not the land, she said. Land is land. It's that this is Sammy's whole world, his job, his animals, his routine, his room, The exact walk from the house to the barn he's done 10,000 times. You understand what it does to take that from someone and call it a real estate transaction. He is not sentimental. He is a person, and this is his life. And I promised our parents I would keep him safe and whole, and I am about to lose the one place that does both. She wasn't crying. She was past crying. I don't know how to fight a man who has more money than God and a nephew he can't be bothered to see as human. And here is the fear that was mine, the one I hadn't said out loud to anyone, sitting right beside hers on that porch. I was terrified I would not be enough. That I was one country vet with a good name and a used truck, and that against Roy Prentice's money and lawyers I was nothing, and that I would fail the first family that had ever chosen me the way I'd sworn I'd never fail anyone again. A green and gold bracelet on your wrist is a promise. I was afraid I couldn't keep it. So I stopped being afraid, which is a decision more than a feeling, and I went to work in the only way I knew, which was to refuse to do it alone. Because here is the thing Roy Prentice did not understand about a county this size. He'd been gone from it for years, up in his estate and his arithmetic, and he had forgotten how it works out here. I had spent 10 years, and then 4 more being the man who came at 2 in the morning. I'd calved half the herds in the valley. I'd sat up with dying dogs and saved prize bulls, and never once padded a bill for a family having a hard year. When you do that long enough, you're not a vet anymore. You're woven in. And when I started, quietly, telling people what was being done to the Prentice place and to Sammy, who half the county knew and every child at the fair adored, something started to move that no amount of Roy's money could buy. The county fair was in August, and it had always ended with a community day, and I got the fair board, who all owed me one animal or another, to let the last afternoon be a benefit. For the refuge, open to everyone. We did not advertise it as a fight. We advertised it as a celebration. Come see the animals. Meet Sammy, who ran his own booth showing kids how to braid a bracelet and telling them the name and story of every creature he'd ever loved. In his element, in his glory, the furthest thing from a burden that has ever walked a fairground. Nell sold jars of honey, and I answered livestock questions for free, and the whole valley came, because the whole valley had, at one time or another, needed the man in the used truck or loved the young man at the bracelet booth. Roy came too. I'd made sure he'd hear about it, because a scheme that lives in envelopes dies in daylight. He came to see his liability celebrated, and he stood at the edge of it in his pressed shirt, and he found a county that was not on his side. It came apart for him in front of everyone, and it came apart because of paper, his own weapon turned around. A woman named Deborah Vance ran the County Historical Society, and she was there because I'd asked her to look into something. It turned out the original grant of that riverland, from 3 generations back, carried a covenant. Old language, easy to miss, the kind of thing a man in a hurry to sell wouldn't read. The land had been deeded with a provision that a portion be kept for animal husbandry and community use in perpetuity, and that provision ran with the land, and it did not care what Roy Prentice wanted. His developers' lots were, in a word, impossible. Deborah stood up on the flatbed we'd been using as a stage, in front of half the county and a reporter from the Valley paper, and she read the covenant out loud in a clear, carrying voice, and then she read the date, and then she looked at Roy. And the inspector's paper wall came down with it. Because once people were paying attention, once there was a reporter and a crowd, somebody asked the obvious question, which was why a county inspector had suddenly found a dozen violations on a 20-year-old sanctuary, the same season the landowner decided to sell. It did not take long for that thread to lead where threads like that always lead. The citations were quietly withdrawn within the month. A man who works by envelopes cannot survive being read out loud. I remember watching Roy's face while Deborah read. He was a man who had come to a fair expecting to feel like the smartest person there, the one who understood money and land, and knew that sentiment always loses to a good offer. And I watched him realize, line by read-aloud line, that he had been beaten by the very thing he'd sneered at, that the old family goodwill he'd dismissed had left a rule in the ground itself, and that his own grandfather had reached across 100 years to stop him. He opened his mouth once. He looked at the reporter's notebook and the ring of quiet faces and the child at Sammy's booth holding up a half-finished bracelet, and he closed it again. There was nothing to say that would not make the paper. Roy left before the pie contest. He didn't say anything to Nell. He just walked to his truck through a crowd that had, very politely and without a single raised voice, closed against him like water. Nobody had to shout. That was the thing. It wasn't a mob. It was just a whole community, quietly and completely on the other side. And Sammy, who did not fully follow the legal part and did not need to, understood the important part perfectly, which was that his uncle was leaving and his home was staying, and he went right back to teaching a 7-year-old how to tie off a knot. The sanctuary was saved that August on a flatbed stage, with a covenant 3 generations old and a county that had decided Sammy Prentice and his animals were worth keeping. Roy sold his interest in the estate not long after and moved away for good, and I cannot tell you I was sorry to see the dust of his truck for the last time. But saving the place wasn't the end of it for me. It was the beginning of the part where I stopped visiting a family and became one. I'd been driving out to the refuge for months. That fall I stopped driving out. I moved in. I gave up the lease on my empty apartment in town, and I brought my boxes to the yellow-lamped house past the river, and I set up my vet practice out of a shed I fixed up with Sammy, who supervised the entire renovation with a clipboard he'd found somewhere and took extremely seriously. The donkey named General watched me carry my boxes in and did not try to kick me, which everyone agreed was a formal endorsement. I asked Nell to marry me on the porch in October. No ring hidden in anything, no grand production, because Nell would have seen a production coming a mile off and told it to sit down. I just took her chapped hand in the cold and said I'd like to make it official, the not coming alone from both directions, because I didn't come alone anymore either, and I never wanted to again. She said yes before I finished. Then she made me go ask Sammy formally, which I did, hat in my hand, and Sammy considered it with the gravity of a judge and said, "Yeah, I already knew. I made you the bracelet, as if I were slow which fair." We married the next spring at the sanctuary, a year almost to the week from a rainy Friday I nearly ran from. Not a big wedding. The whole valley came anyway, the way they'd come to the fair, because out here that's the same thing as being invited. Nell wore her grandmother's dress and I wore my good boots, and on my left wrist, tied on tight and double knotted 11 months before, a bracelet of deep green and brown and a thread of gold. It had faded a little by then. I'd worn it through calvings and cold snaps, and it had earned every faded thread. Sammy stood up beside me as my best man, in a suit he'd picked himself, and he'd made 2 new bracelets for the day, one for Nell and one for himself, so that all 3 of us matched, family, his word, always his word. When the officiant asked who gave this woman, it was Sammy who stepped forward, proud as a king, and it was the most right thing I have ever seen. We're still out there. The sign still says Prentice Refuge, because that's Sammy's name too, and there was never any question of changing it. Clover lived 3 more good years and died old in the sun. General lets me scratch behind his left ear, and on his very best days, the right one now too. There are more animals than ever, and the covenant holds, and Sammy runs the place with me, and does the crossword out loud, and gets annoyed if you help without being asked. Here is what 10 years of caregiving taught me, and what one rainy Friday finally let me use. We tell people that love is being swept away, that the right one arrives and everything is easy and light, and you simply fall. But that was never the love I knew. The love I knew was the 6 in the morning kind, the lifting kind, the kind that shows up at 1:15 and stays until dawn. I thought that kind of love was a debt I paid to my mother, a decade I owed and gave. I did not understand until Nell said, "I don't come alone across 2 cooling coffees," that it was never a debt. It was training. All those years I thought I was missing my life. I was learning the only thing that would ever let me recognize a real one when it finally sat down across from me. The men who left Nell weren't cruel. Most of them, I'd guess, were just looking for the easy, light, swept-away kind of love, and they saw a whole family where they wanted a simpler thing, and they went to find it. I don't blame them. I just know they were wrong about which was the treasure. They thought Sammy and the sanctuary, and the 6 in the morning of it all was the price of Nell. It was never the price. It was the prize. It was the whole reason she was worth staying for. A woman who loves that completely, who builds her whole life around keeping her people safe and whole, is not a woman you tolerate the extras to be with. She is a woman whose extras are the best part of her, and the man who understands that gets to keep all of it. I spent my 20s afraid I'd given my one life away. I didn't. I was just holding it in trust for 3 people I hadn't met yet. And when the last one finally tied a green and gold bracelet onto my wrist and told me I was family, I understood that the people who stay for the whole package, who don't come alone and don't want you to either, are the ones who were always, all along, worth the wait. My name is Jonah Rourke. I'm 33 years old, and I don't come alone anymore. Thank God. Would you have stayed once you learned she didn't come alone?